Everyone said this route was safe. Truckers on the CB, guys at the way stations, even the dispatcher who'd been running loads through the Southwest for 30 years. Take the 54 through New Mexico, they said. Scenic, easy, nothing but desert and stars. They were all wrong. My name is Ray Delgado. I'm 47 years old. I've been driving long-haul trucks for 22 years, running routes all across the continental United States. I've seen things on the road that would make most people nervous. Accidents that didn't look like accidents. Abandoned cars in places where there's no reason to stop. Hitchhikers who appear out of nowhere and vanish before you can slow down. You learn to keep your eyes forward, keep your hands on the wheel. Don't stop unless you absolutely have to. But sometimes you don't have a choice. It was late October when I picked up a load in El Paso bound for Amarillo. Refrigerated trailer full of produce. Standard run, maybe 6 hours if traffic cooperated. I'd done this route 100 times. Usually took I-10 to I-25, nice and easy. Plenty of truck stops along the way. But that day, there was a jackknifed semi blocking 3 lanes outside Las Cruces. Traffic backed up for miles. Dispatch was on my case about the delivery window, so I made a decision I'll regret for the rest of my life. I took the back roads. Highway 54 runs north through the heart of New Mexico, cutting through some of the emptiest country you've ever seen. Miles and miles of nothing but scrubland and mazes and the occasional cluster of buildings that might have been a town 50 years ago. The sun was setting when I turned off the interstate. Beautiful, actually. The whole sky lit up orange and purple, the desert glowing like fire. I remember thinking how peaceful it looked. I should have known better. Nothing that empty is ever peaceful. About 2 hours in, my fuel gauge started dropping faster than it should have. I'd filled up in El Paso, full tank. Should have been good for 400 miles, but the needle was past halfway and falling fast. I checked for leaks at the next wide spot. Nothing. Tank was fine. Lines were fine. Just the gauge, dropping like the truck was drinking fuel twice as fast as normal. I got back in and kept driving. What else could I do? There was nothing behind me and nothing ahead, except more desert and the promise of a town called Vaughn, about 60 miles north. I made it 37 miles before the engine started sputtering. The truck died on a stretch of highway so empty I couldn't see another vehicle in either direction. No lights, no buildings, nothing except cracked asphalt and a faded sign that said, Willard, 4 miles. I'd never heard of Willard, wasn't on my maps, wasn't on my GPS, which had lost signal an hour earlier, but 4 miles was walkable, and sitting in a dead truck wasn't getting my load delivered. I grabbed my flashlight, locked the cab, and started walking. The desert at night is something you have to experience to understand. No light pollution, no sound except your footsteps and the wind. Stars so thick it almost hurts to look at them. And cold. People don't realize how cold the desert gets after sunset. By the time I'd walked a mile, I was shivering. But I could see lights ahead, faint yellow glows that could only be windows. I walked faster. Willard was small. Maybe 30 buildings clustered around a single main street, gas station with ancient pumps, general store with a hand-painted sign, a bar called the Dust Bowl with neon signs flickering in the window. Everything was closed except the bar. I pushed open the door and stepped into warmth and noise and the smell of cigarette smoke. The music stopped. Every head turned to look at me. There were maybe a dozen people inside. Weathered faces, sun-baked skin, hard looks. They stared at me like I was something they'd never seen before. Evening, I said. Truck broke down a few miles south. Any chance someone could help me get some fuel? Nobody moved. The bartender, a heavy-set woman with gray hair, finally set down the glass she was polishing. We don't get many strangers here, she said, flat, neutral. I can see that. Look, I just need enough diesel to get to the next town. I can pay cash. She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. Earl can help you. She gestured toward a man at the end of the bar. Earl. Take him to get what he needs. Earl was maybe 60, thin as a fence post. He looked at me, then slid off his stool without a word. Come on then. Best get you sorted before it gets too late. I followed Earl down the main street toward what might have been a repair shop once. The whole walk, he didn't say a word. "Appreciate the help," I said. "Didn't expect to find anything out here." "Most people don't. How long have you lived here?" He stopped, turned to look at me with eyes that seemed older than his face. "Always. All of us have. Always." Something about the way he said it made my skin prickle. Earl's shop was dark and cramped, filled with tools that looked like they hadn't been used in decades. He had a hand pump connected to a 50-gallon drum. "How much?" I asked, pulling out my wallet. "No charge." His voice was strange, almost sad. "Just take what you need and go, before midnight." "Before midnight? Why?" He didn't answer, just started pumping fuel into the jerry can. "Why before midnight?" I asked again. He stopped, looked at me with something like pity. "Because that's when Willard wakes up." I laughed, couldn't help it. The whole thing was too absurd. "Wakes up? What does that mean?" Earl just shook his head. "You'll see, if you're still here." He finished filling the can, shoved it into my hands, and pointed toward the door. "Go, now, and don't stop for anything until you're past the county line." Something in his eyes, desperate and afraid, made me keep my mouth shut. I took the fuel and left. The walk back felt longer. The stars seemed dimmer. The wind carried sounds that might have been voices if I listened too closely. I didn't listen, kept my feet moving. When I reached the truck, I checked my watch. 11:43 p.m. 17 minutes until midnight. I poured the fuel into the tank, climbed into the cab, and turned the key. Nothing. The engine wouldn't turn over, wouldn't even try. The starter clicked once, twice, then silence. Dead battery. Impossible. The battery had been fine when I stopped, but impossible things were becoming very possible in Willard, New Mexico. I checked my watch again. 11:47. The wind was getting louder. Those sounds, the ones that might have been voices, were getting clearer, closer. I could hear words now, not English, something older, something that made my teeth ache. At 11:51, the lights of Willard went out. All of them. Every window, every street light, every neon sign. One moment the town was a faint glow on the horizon. The next, it was gone. I sat in my dark cab, heart pounding, watching the horizon. And then I saw them. Lights. Dozens of them. Moving across the desert toward me. Not flashlights, not headlights. Something that flickered and pulsed with a rhythm that didn't match anything natural. Coming closer. At 11:58, I made a decision. I grabbed my flashlight and got out of the truck. Started walking south, away from Willard, away from the lights. Behind me, I could hear the voices clearly now, chanting, singing, calling something I couldn't understand but felt in my bones. I ran. I don't know how long I ran, don't know how far. The desert stretched endlessly, no landmarks, no roads, just sand and scrub and the terrible sounds behind me. At some point, I fell. Lay there gasping, waiting for the lights to catch up. They didn't. When I finally looked back, there was nothing. No lights, no voices, no town on the horizon, just empty desert under a sky full of stars. I walked until sunrise, found a highway I didn't recognize, flagged down a passing car, an elderly couple on their way to Albuquerque. They looked at me like I was crazy, covered in dirt and babbling about a town that didn't exist. Because that's the thing. When we drove back to find my truck, there was nothing there. No truck, no highway, no sign that anything had ever existed on that stretch of desert. I reported the truck stolen. Insurance paid out eventually. But I know what really happened. Willard took it. The way it takes everything that stops there after dark. I did some research afterward, spent weeks digging through old records. Willard, New Mexico was a real town once, founded in 1903. Population peaked at about 300 in the 20s. By 1950, it was gone. Abandoned. Every single resident vanished over a single night. No bodies, no explanations. The official story is that they moved away. Drought, economic decline. But I found other stories. about travelers who took the wrong road and found a town that shouldn't exist, about lights in the desert and voices that called at midnight, about people who stopped in Willard and were never seen again. The town never died. It just changed. I don't drive that route anymore. Don't drive anywhere near New Mexico if I can help it. But sometimes, late at night when I'm alone in the cab and the radio is nothing but static, I hear something. Voices, faint and far away, speaking in a language I almost understand. And I wonder if Willard is still out there, still waiting, still hungry. About 6 months ago, I got a letter. No return address. Postmarked from Vaughn, New Mexico. Inside was a photograph. It showed my truck, my 18-wheeler, sitting in the middle of a main street I recognized, Willard's Main Street. Broad daylight, empty except for my truck and a handful of figures standing around it. Figures that didn't look quite right. Too tall, too thin. Faces that were almost human, but not quite. On the back of the photo, in handwriting that wasn't mine, "We're taking good care of it. Come back any time." I burned the photo that night, burned the letter too. But I still have the business card Earl gave me. I don't remember him giving it, but I found it in my pocket the morning after. Plain white card, an address I can't find on any map, a phone number that connects to nothing but static, and a single sentence on the back. "We'll be seeing you again, Ray, every October around the anniversary." I find myself thinking about that highway, the lights, the voices. I wonder if someday the road will lead me back whether I want it or not, whether I'll have a choice at all. If you ever find yourself driving through New Mexico after dark, stick to the interstate. Don't take shortcuts. Don't trust your GPS when it loses signal. And if you see lights in the desert, lights that flicker and pulse and call to something inside you, don't stop. Don't look. Just keep driving until you're past the county line. Because some towns don't want visitors. Some towns want residents. Forever. I talked to another trucker last year at a Flying J outside Phoenix. Old-timer with even more miles than me. When I mentioned New Mexico, his face went pale. "You didn't take 54, did you? You found Willard." He told me his own story. Different year, same town, same wrongness, same lights at midnight. He'd escaped too, barely. "There are more of us than you'd think," he said. "People who've seen it, who got out. We don't talk about it much, but we know." He gave me advice that night, said it was the only thing that helped him sleep. Never drive alone through New Mexico after dark. And if you ever find yourself on a road that shouldn't exist, heading toward lights that don't show up on any map, close your eyes. Count to 10. When you open them, you'll be somewhere else. I asked how that was possible. He just shrugged. "I don't know how any of it's possible. I just know it works." I've never had to test his theory. Never been back. But I keep his advice ready just in case. Because Willard is still out there, still waiting. And every year, someone new disappears on those empty highways, and no one ever finds out what happened. I know what happened. They stopped at the wrong town, stayed past midnight, and now they're part of Willard forever. My wife thinks I should see a therapist. Says I haven't been the same since that night. Says I wake up screaming sometimes, calling out names I've never mentioned to her. Earl, the bartender, the voices in the desert. She's not wrong. I'm not the same. I spent 22 years believing the world made sense. That if you stuck to the roads, kept your head down, did your job, nothing could touch you. That the stories truckers tell at rest stops were just stories, exaggerations, hallucinations, the product of too many hours alone. Now I know better. There are places in this country that don't follow the rules. Places that exist outside of maps and GPS signals and rational explanation. Places that are hungry for something travelers carry. Life, maybe, or memories, or something more fundamental I don't have words for. Willard is one of those places. And once you've seen it, once you've been inside it, it never really lets you go. I keep a journal now. Document every strange thing I see on the road. Every town that doesn't feel right. Every stretch of highway where the radio cuts to static and the air feels thick. I've got 3 notebooks full. Dozens of places across the Southwest that match the pattern. Towns that appear on no maps. Roads that lead somewhere they shouldn't. lights in the distance that call to you in ways you can't explain. I don't know if writing it down helps anyone. Maybe I'm just trying to convince myself I'm not crazy. But every time I add a new entry, I think about the people who might come after me, the drivers who don't know what's out there, the families on vacation who take a wrong turn and never come back. Maybe someday someone will find these notebooks and understand. Maybe someday someone will believe. Until then, I just keep driving, keep documenting, keep hoping that the road never leads me back to Willard. But I know deep down that hope might not be enough. Some places, once they've tasted you, never stop hungering for more. Last thing, and then I'm done. 3 nights ago, I was driving through Texas, middle of nowhere, just me and the stars and the endless yellow lines. My radio cut to static around 2 a.m., and through the static, I heard voices, faint, far away, speaking in that same language from the desert, the one that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. I turned the radio off, kept driving, didn't look in the mirrors. But when I stopped for fuel the next morning and checked my phone, there was a text from an unknown number. It said, "You can't stay away forever, Ray. The road always leads home." I deleted it, changed my number, told myself it was a prank. But I know it wasn't. Willard is patient. Willard remembers. And someday, no matter how hard I try to avoid it, the highway is going to curve when I don't expect it to. The GPS is going to lose signal. The fuel gauge is going to drop. And I'll find myself on that empty stretch of road again, watching the lights of a town that shouldn't exist growing brighter on the horizon. When that day comes, I don't know if I'll have the strength to run again. Part of me doesn't even know if I want to, because there's something seductive about the desert at night, something that calls to the tired parts of you, the lonely parts, the parts that wonder if maybe belonging somewhere, even somewhere terrible, is better than being alone on an endless road. That's how they get you, I think, not through force, through exhaustion. They wait until you're too tired to fight, too lost to find your way back. And then they welcome you home. Don't let it happen to you. Stay on the main roads, travel with someone, keep your phone charged and your tank full. And if you ever see a sign for a town that isn't on your map, a town that promises rest and fuel and warmth, keep driving, no matter how tired you are, no matter how much the lights call to you. Keep driving until the sun comes up. Because daylight has power. Daylight breaks whatever spell these places cast, but night belongs to them. And in the night, on those empty desert highways, anything is possible. Anything at all. If you ever take a travel nursing assignment in a small town where nobody will tell you why the last nurse left, pay attention to that silence. I wish someone had warned me before I signed the contract for Copper Hill, Arizona, because the silence wasn't discretion. It was fear. My name is Melissa Tran. I'm 31 years old. I've been a travel nurse for 6 years, working short-term contracts at hospitals and clinics across the country. It's a good life if you can handle the instability. New places every few months, no time to put down roots. You learn to make friends fast and say goodbye faster. I took the assignment in Copper Hill because the money was ridiculous. Double my usual rate, plus housing, plus a completion bonus that would have paid off my student loans. I should have asked why they were paying so much. I should have asked why the position had been open for 8 months. Copper Hill is a mining town. It was a mining town anyway. The copper ran out in the 80s and most people left. What's still there is a ghost of what it used to be. Empty storefronts, abandoned houses, streets too wide for the handful of people still walking them. The clinic was small. 20 beds if you filled them all, but they never did. Most days it was just me, a receptionist named Dorothy who was pushing 80, and Dr. Hale, who'd been the town's only physician for 40 years. Dr. Hale picked me up at the bus station when I arrived. Tall, thin, white hair, hands that shook slightly on the steering wheel. He didn't say much during the drive. "Quiet town," he said when we pulled up to the clinic. "You'll get used to it." I didn't ask what he meant. I should have. The first week was easy. Minor injuries, chronic condition management, elderly patients who seemed more interested in conversation than medical care. Dorothy brought me cookies every morning, homemade, still warm. She'd sit with me during breaks and tell stories about Copper Hill's heyday. Used to be 3,000 people here, she said. Now we're down to maybe 200. Why do people stay? She went quiet, looked out the window. Some folks don't have anywhere else to go, and some folks can't leave. I laughed. Can't leave? Like there's a force field? She didn't laugh back. Something like that, she said, and changed the subject. The first strange thing happened during my second week. I was doing overnight rounds, checking on our 3 patients, when I saw someone standing at the end of the hallway. A woman, middle-aged, gray hair, hospital gown. One of the patients, I assumed. Ma'am, do you need help getting back to your room? She didn't answer, just stood there, swaying slightly, face half hidden in shadow. I walked toward her. When I got close enough to see clearly, something was wrong. Her features were off, eyes a little too far apart, mouth a little too wide, like someone had tried to copy a human face from memory and gotten the proportions wrong. Ma'am? She turned and walked around the corner. By the time I followed, she was gone. Empty hallway, locked door at the end. I checked every room, counted every patient. All 3 were sound asleep. There was no 4th patient. There had never been a 4th patient. I told Dr. Hale the next morning, described the woman, the wrong face, the way she vanished. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded slowly. You saw one of them. One of who? He took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes, suddenly looked every one of his 73 years. Copper Hill has residents that aren't entirely human. They look like us, sound like us, but they're copies, approximations, something wearing a person shaped the way you'd wear a coat. I stared at him. You're serious? I've been treating patients in this town for 4 decades. I've seen them come and go. Watched people I knew replaced by things that smiled with their faces but had nothing behind the eyes. Replaced? That's what they do. Find someone who won't be missed. Someone alone. Someone new. He looked at me meaningfully. Someone like a travel nurse on a short-term contract. I should have left that day. Called my agency, broken the contract, taken the financial hit, and gotten the hell out. But here's the thing about being told something impossible. Your brain fights it, rationalizes, finds explanations. Old man losing his grip on reality. Small-town superstition. A prank to scare the newcomer. So I stayed, and I started paying attention. Over the next 2 weeks, I noticed things I'd overlooked before. The way certain people in town moved, too smooth, too coordinated. Like they were thinking about each step instead of just walking. The way conversations would pause when I entered a room. The way eyes would follow me, not curious but evaluating, measuring. The way some residents seemed to know things they shouldn't. What I'd eaten for breakfast, what time I'd gone to sleep, which patient I'd checked on first, and the faces. Some faces just weren't right, the proportions slightly off, the smiles that didn't reach the eyes, the skin that looked almost waxy in certain light. I started keeping a list, names of people who felt wrong, locations where I'd seen them. By the end of the first month, I had 17 names on my list. 17 people in a town of 200 who might not be people at all. Dr. Hale gave me more information, piece by piece, like he was testing how much I could handle. The things had been in Copper Hill for as long as anyone could remember. The original miners found something in the tunnels, something old, something hungry. They made deals with it, offered it sacrifices. In exchange, it let them take the copper. When the copper ran out and people started leaving, the deals changed. Now it took something else. It copies people, Dr. Hale said, studies them, learns their memories, their habits, their relationships, and then, one day, the original disappears and the copy takes their place. What happens to the originals? He was quiet for a long time. No one knows, but they don't come back. I started sleeping with a chair against my door, started carrying pepper spray everywhere I went, started documenting everything, photos, videos, detailed notes, evidence, I told myself, proof that I wasn't losing my mind. The copies noticed. I could feel their attention intensifying, more of them appearing wherever I went, more of those wrong smiles, more of those measuring looks. One night I woke up at 3 a.m. to find someone standing outside my window. Just standing there, staring at me through the glass. It looked like Dorothy. Same gray hair, same floral dress, same gentle smile, but Dorothy's eyes had warmth, kindness. These eyes had nothing. I lay there frozen until sunrise. Didn't move, didn't breathe. When the sun finally came up, the thing wearing Dorothy's face was gone. I confronted the real Dorothy the next morning, described what I'd seen. Her face went white. "They're choosing," she whispered. "When they watch you like that, they're choosing." "Choosing what? Whether to replace you?" "Why me?" "Because you're alone. Because no one knows you here. Because if you disappeared tomorrow, your agency would just send someone else and no one would ask questions." She grabbed my hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "You need to leave tonight. Don't tell anyone. Just go." "I can't. My car's in the shop. The mechanic said it needs parts." Something flickered across her face. Fear, but also resignation. "The mechanic," she said. "He's one of them. He's been one of them for 15 years. That night, I tried to walk out of town. Every road led back to the same place. Every path through the desert curved back toward Copper Hill. It was like the town itself was a maze designed to keep me in. By midnight, I was back at the clinic, exhausted and terrified. Dr. Hale was waiting for me. "They won't let you leave now," he said. "Not until they've made a decision." "What decision?" "Whether to keep you as you are or make a new you." The next 3 weeks were the worst of my life. I saw copies everywhere, at the grocery store, at the gas station, walking down the street at 3 in the morning, their movements too smooth, their faces too perfect. And I saw myself. 3 times I caught glimpses of someone who looked exactly like me. Same hair, same clothes, same way of walking, but not me. A copy, a draft, something practicing how to be Melissa Tran. Each time I saw it, it was more accurate, more convincing. The proportions evening out, the movements becoming natural. It was learning. And when it finished learning, I knew what would happen. Dr. Hale saved me. On my 8th week in Copper Hill, he came to my room at 2 in the morning. "There's a window," he said. "One night a year when the tunnels are quiet, when they're digesting. The originals don't wake up. The copies don't watch." "When?" "Tonight. Right now. We have maybe 3 hours before dawn." I didn't ask questions, just grabbed my bag and followed him. He led me to a path I'd never seen before. Through the desert, away from the roads, toward a distant highway I could barely see in the darkness. At the edge of town, he stopped. "I can't go further. I've been here too long. But you can. You're still new. Still mostly yourself. Come with me." He shook his head sadly. "I was replaced 27 years ago, Melissa. The original Dr. Hale died in those tunnels a long time ago. I'm just what they made to keep the clinic running." I stared at him, at this man who'd warned me, helped me, saved me. "Why?" I whispered. "If you're one of them, why help me?" Something flickered in his eyes, something almost human. "Because sometimes even copies remember what it felt like to be real. And I remember enough to know that what we do is wrong." He pushed me toward the highway. "Go. Don't look back. And never, ever come back to Arizona." I ran. I didn't stop until I reached Tucson, hitchhiked with a trucker who didn't ask questions, called my agency from a gas station payphone, told them I had a family emergency, broke my contract. Never explained what really happened. How could I? It's been 2 years since Copper Hill. I don't take assignments in small towns anymore. Don't go anywhere isolated. Don't stay anywhere too long. But sometimes, late at night, I see someone on the street who walks just a little too smoothly, whose smile doesn't quite reach their eyes. And I wonder if they followed me, or if there are copies everywhere, in every town, waiting for someone alone to replace. If you're a travel nurse or any kind of worker who takes contracts in remote places, please listen. Research every assignment before you accept it. Talk to the people who worked there before you. Ask why the position is open. Ask why the pay is so high. And if nobody will answer your questions, if there's only silence where there should be explanation, that silence is telling you everything you need to know. Run before they choose you, before they learn you well enough to become you, before you become something that smiles with your face but has nothing behind the eyes. There's one more thing I need to tell you. About 6 months after I escaped Copper Hill, I got a friend request on Facebook from myself. Not my account, a different one. Same name, same profile picture, same everything. But I didn't create it. The account had been active for 3 months, posting photos of places I'd never been, checking in at restaurants I'd never visited, commenting on posts from people I'd never met, building a life, my life, but not mine. I reported the account immediately. Facebook took it down within a day. But before they did, I looked through the photos. In every single one, there was a woman who looked exactly like me. Same face, same smile, same way of tilting her head when she laughed. But her eyes were wrong, empty, flat. Like a photograph of a photograph, missing some essential quality that makes a person real. The last photo was taken in Tucson, at the same gas station where I'd called my agency 2 years ago. The caption said, "Starting a new adventure. Can't wait to see where the road takes me." The timestamp was 3 days before I received the friend request. It was in Tucson, looking for me. I moved that night, packed everything I owned into my car and drove until I couldn't keep my eyes open anymore. Ended up in Denver, then Chicago, then Boston. I've moved 4 times in the past 18 months. Never stay anywhere longer than a few months. Never put down roots. Because I know it's still out there. The thing that learned to be me. The thing that practiced my walk and my smile and my voice until it could fool anyone who didn't know better. And maybe some who did. I called my mom last month just to check in, see how she was doing. She sounded strange on the phone, distant, like she was talking to someone she didn't quite recognize. "Melissa, honey, are you okay? You sound different." "Different how?" Long pause. "I don't know, just different. More like yourself somehow." The words hit me like ice water. More like yourself, which meant someone else had been calling her. Someone else had been pretending to be me, and that someone had been just different enough that my mother noticed, but not different enough to question. I hung up, blocked her number, haven't spoken to her since, and it's safer that way. For both of us. If the copy contacts her again, at least she won't be able to tell it anything about where I really am. I'm telling you this because you need to understand. The things in Copper Hill aren't just local. They spread. They follow. They build networks. And once they've chosen you, once they've learned enough to create a copy, they never stop trying to replace you. The original is a loose end, a contradiction to the copy's existence. They can't rest until the original's gone. I don't know how this ends for me. Maybe I'll keep running forever. Keep moving from city to city, always one step ahead of the thing wearing my face. Maybe one day it'll find me. Show up at my door with my smile and my voice, and finish whatever it started in Copper Hill. Or maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe it'll lose interest, find someone else to copy, someone easier, someone who doesn't know what's coming. I try not to think about that last possibility too much, because whoever that someone else is, they won't know to run. They won't know to fight. They'll just wake up one morning to find a stranger in the mirror, a stranger who knows everything they know, who has everyone they love, who has stolen their entire life while they were sleeping. And then they'll disappear, like the original Dr. Hale, like however many others have vanished in Copper Hill over the decades, like I almost did. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. Pay attention to the people around you. Notice when something feels off. Trust your instincts when someone familiar suddenly seems like a stranger. Because the copies are out there. Maybe not everywhere. Maybe not in your town. But somewhere, watching, learning, waiting. And when they find someone alone, someone new, someone who won't be missed, they'll do what they've always done. Make a new version, a better version, a version with nothing behind the eyes. One last thing. I've been researching since I escaped. digging through records, news archives, missing persons reports. Copper Hill isn't the only place. There are towns like it scattered across the Southwest, small, dying communities in the middle of nowhere. Places where people go missing at higher rates than statistics can explain. Places where the residents are a little too quiet, a little too uniform, a little too reluctant to talk about their neighbors. I've mapped them, marked them, created a database of places to avoid. Sometime soon, I'm going to publish it. Put it somewhere people can find it. Warn the travelers and the truckers and the nurses and everyone else who might stumble into these places by accident. It's the least I can do. Because Dr. Hale saved me, even though he was one of them, even though helping me probably went against everything he was made to do. He remembered what it felt like to be human. And I remember what it felt like to almost lose that. If you're listening to this, you're probably safe. Probably in a city somewhere, surrounded by people, living a normal life. But if you ever find yourself on a long drive through empty country, if you ever take a job in a town too small to appear on most maps, if you ever meet someone whose smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, remember my story. Remember Copper Hill, and remember that some things wear human faces the way you'd wear a mask. The face doesn't make them human, and underneath the mask, they're always hungry, always watching, always waiting for someone alone. When my great-uncle Vernon died, he left me a ranch in West Texas I didn't know existed. Everyone said, don't go. Everyone said, sell it, sight unseen. Everyone said some inheritances come with prices you can't afford to pay. I should have listened. My name is Daniel Reeves. I'm 38 years old. I work as a probate attorney in Houston, which means I spend most of my time helping people sort through the belongings of the dead. I've seen every kind of inheritance you can imagine. Mansions and hovels, fortunes and debts, family heirlooms that turn out to be worthless, and junk that turns out to be priceless. But I'd never seen anything like what Uncle Vernon left behind. I barely knew the man, met him twice, maybe 3 times when I was a kid. He was my grandmother's brother, a recluse who'd moved to West Texas in the 60s and never came back. The family didn't talk about him much. When they did, they used words like eccentric and difficult and best left alone. The letter from his attorney arrived on a Tuesday. Vernon Reeves had died at the age of 93, and I was his sole heir. The estate consisted of a 4,000-acre ranch outside a town called Marfa, a substantial bank account, and what the letter described as an extensive collection of curiosities. No other family members were named, no other beneficiaries, just me. I should have found that strange. A man I'd met twice, leaving everything to his great-nephew. But I was 38, recently divorced, drowning in student loans. The money alone would change my life. So I drove out to West Texas to see what I'd inherited. The drive from Houston to Marfa takes about 8 hours if you don't stop. I made it in 10, taking my time, watching the landscape change from coastal humidity to hill country to high desert. By the time I reached Marfa, the sun was setting. The town was small, maybe 2,000 people, but surprisingly artsy. Galleries and restaurants and the kind of quirky shops you'd expect in a place that attracted tourists. The attorney who'd contacted me had an office on the main street. His name was Harold Finch, and he'd been handling Vernon's affairs for 40 years. Your uncle was a collector, Harold said as he handed me the keys. Spent his whole life accumulating things, things most people would throw away, things most people would run from. What kind of things? Harold hesitated. You'll see. The ranch is about 30 miles north. Road's not great, but your car should make it. I'd recommend getting there before dark. Why? He didn't answer, just shook my hand and wished me luck. The road to Vernon's ranch turned to dirt after the first 10 miles. After 20, it was barely more than tire tracks through the scrubland. I almost turned back twice. Told myself I'd come back in the morning with a better vehicle. But something kept me going. Curiosity, maybe. Or the same stubbornness that made me drive 8 hours to see a property I could have sold remotely. The sun was touching the horizon when I finally saw the house. It was bigger than I expected. A sprawling adobe compound with outbuildings scattered around it like satellites. Old but well-maintained, the kind of place that had stood for 100 years and would stand for 100 more. But something about it felt wrong. It was too quiet. No birds, no insects, no wind rustling through the scrub. Just silence, thick and heavy, pressing against my ears. I parked in front of the main house and sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the front door. Every instinct told me to turn around, to drive back to Marfa, find a hotel, come back in daylight with other people. But I was tired. I'd been driving for 10 hours, and the house was mine now. I got out of the car, unlocked the front door, and stepped inside. The smell hit me first. Not decay, not rot, something else. Old paper, dust, and underneath, something metallic, like copper or rust. I fumbled for a light switch, found one, clicked it. Nothing happened. The power was out. Of course it was. The place had been empty since Vernon died 6 weeks ago. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and started exploring. The first room was a living room. Normal enough. Worn furniture, Native American rugs on the floor, bookshelves lining every wall. But the bookshelves weren't filled with books. They were filled with jars, hundreds of them. Mason jars, specimen jars, jars of every size and shape, each one labeled with a handwritten tag. I moved closer, shining my light on the nearest shelf. Breath of a Dying Man, 1973. Final Word of Sarah Hightower, 1981. Scream of a Child Lost in the Desert, 1967. I stepped back, heart pounding. The jars appeared empty, just glass and air and yellowed labels. But somehow, I knew they weren't empty. Somehow, I knew Vernon had filled them with exactly what the labels claimed. I should have left then. Should have walked out of that house, driven back to Houston, and signed the whole property over to the state. But I didn't. Because on the next shelf, I saw something that made me forget everything else. A jar labeled with my name. Daniel Reeves, First Heartbreak, 1998. I was 12 years old in 1998. That was the year my dog died. The year I cried for a week straight, and my parents didn't know how to comfort me. The year my great-uncle Vernon would have had no way of knowing about. Unless I spent the next 3 hours going through Vernon's house. Every room was the same. Shelves upon shelves of jars, each one containing something impossible. Memories, emotions, moments that should have been intangible, somehow captured and preserved like butterflies under glass. The kitchen had jars of regrets. The bedroom had jars of dreams. The basement, and I almost didn't go into the basement, had jars of deaths. Hundreds of them, labeled with names and dates and locations. Maria Santos, drowning. Marfa, 1955. William Crenshaw, heart attack. Highway 67, 1971. Unnamed infant, stillbirth. Ranch house, 1989. Each jar contained a wisp of something, a shadow, a presence that pressed against the glass when I brought my light close, as if trying to escape, or trying to reach me. I found Vernon's journal in his study. It explained everything, or tried to. Vernon had discovered something in the desert when he first bought the ranch in 1962. Something old, something that had been collecting things long before humans existed. He called it the accumulator. It lived beneath the desert, he wrote, fed on moments, on emotions, on the intangible things that make life meaningful. And it was willing to share. Vernon spent 60 years making deals with the accumulator, trading things he found for things he wanted, building a collection that spanned decades of human experience. The last entry was dated 2 days before his death. The collection is complete. Daniel will understand. Daniel has to understand. He's the only one left who can take my place. The accumulator needs a keeper, and keepers don't get to retire. They get replaced. I understood then why I'd been chosen, not because Vernon cared about me, not because he wanted to give me his money or his ranch, because he needed someone to inherit his deal, his obligation, his prison. The accumulator needed a new keeper, and I was the only family he had left. I tried to leave, packed up my phone, my keys, my overnight bag, walked out the front door. The car wouldn't start. I tried to walk. Made it about a mile before the desert itself seemed to shift. Before every direction led back to the ranch house, I was trapped. The same way Vernon had been trapped for 60 years. The same way whoever came before Vernon had been trapped before that. That night, I met the accumulator. It rose out of the desert around midnight. Not a creature exactly. More like an absence, a hole in the shape of something that might once have been alive. It didn't speak, not in words, but I understood what it wanted. The jars needed tending. The collection needed growing. And I was the new keeper, whether I accepted the role or not. The alternative was becoming part of the collection myself. I've been here for 3 months now. I tend the jars, add new ones when the accumulator brings me materials, label them carefully, the way Vernon taught me through his journals. I've collected moments from travelers passing through, regrets from the dying, dreams from the sleeping. The collection grows, the accumulator feeds, and I wait for someone, anyone, to inherit this burden from me. The attorney in Marfa thinks I've embraced the hermit life. The family back in Houston thinks I've had some kind of breakdown. Neither is true. I'm a prisoner, a keeper, a custodian of impossible things, and the worst part of me has started to enjoy it. There's something satisfying about preserving moments, about capturing things that would otherwise be lost forever, about building a library of human experience that spans decades. Vernon warned about this in his journals, said the collection changes you, makes you see value in things others would throw away, makes you protective of what you've gathered, makes you hungry for more. I'm telling you this as a warning. If someone dies and leaves you property in a remote place, property you've never seen from a relative you barely knew, don't accept it. If the locals won't tell you why the previous owner was so isolated, if lawyers speak in riddles and refuse to answer direct questions, don't accept it. If every instinct tells you to walk away, if the silence is too thick and the air smells like copper, don't accept it. Some inheritances aren't gifts, they're traps. And by the time you realize you're caught, it's too late to escape. I'm looking for my replacement now, going through Vernon's records, finding distant relatives I didn't know existed. Someone has to take my place eventually. The accumulator won't let me die until I've found a new keeper. That's part of the deal. So somewhere out there, someone is going to get a letter they weren't expecting, about an inheritance they didn't know was coming, from a relative they've never heard of. They'll drive out to West Texas, curious about what they've received. They'll walk into a house full of jars, and they'll realize, too late, that some collections are never complete. Some collections always need one more piece, and sometimes that piece is you. If you ever receive a letter about property in West Texas from a relative named Reeves, burn it. Don't read it. Don't investigate. Don't let curiosity get the better of you. Just burn it and forget it ever existed. Because I'm getting desperate, and the accumulator's getting hungry. And one of these days, someone is going to accept my invitation. I hope it isn't you, but honestly, at this point, I hope it's someone, anyone. Before I become just another jar on the shelf, I should tell you more about what the collection contains, what I've seen in these jars over the past 3 months. Because maybe then you'll understand why I can never leave, why no one who becomes a keeper ever walks away voluntarily. The collection isn't just death and sorrow. It's not just pain. There's joy in here too. First kisses preserved in crystal, the moment a parent holds their newborn child, the feeling of sun on your face after months of winter, pure, distilled happiness, captured at its peak and kept forever perfect. Vernon collected beauty too. Desert sunsets, thunderstorms over the mountains, the way moonlight looks reflecting off still water. He collected wisdom, final insights from dying philosophers, the clarity that comes right before the end, when everything suddenly makes sense. And he collected love. That's the section I spend the most time in. Thousands of jars spanning 100 years, each one containing a moment when someone loved completely, without reservation, without fear. When I first found this room, I wept, not from horror, from the sheer overwhelming beauty of it. To see love preserved like this, to know it exists, tangible and eternal, protected from the entropy that destroys everything else. How could anyone walk away from that? The accumulator showed me how the collection is used. The jars aren't just for preservation, they're for sharing. When travelers pass through, and some still do despite the isolation, I can offer them what they need. A man grieving his wife can borrow a jar of contentment, just for a night, just long enough to sleep without nightmares. A woman running from her past can borrow a jar of peace, just long enough to make a decision without fear driving her choices. The collection heals people, helps them, and in exchange, they leave something behind, a moment of their own, a memory they don't mind losing. It's not theft, it's trade. That's what Vernon understood. That's what I'm starting to understand. The accumulator isn't evil. It's just hungry. And what it hungers for is the moments that make life worth living. Is that really so terrible? I know how this sounds. Like justification, like rationalization, like the words of someone who's been trapped so long they've started to love their cage. Maybe that's exactly what it is. But let me ask you something. If you could preserve the best moments of your life, really preserve them, not just remember them, but keep them perfect forever, wouldn't you? If you could give someone a jar of hope when they had none, when they were standing on the edge of a bridge or holding a bottle of pills, wouldn't you? If you could build a library of everything beautiful and meaningful and true, and protect it from the entropy that grinds everything else to dust, wouldn't that be worth something? Wouldn't that be worth a lot? I've started adding to the collection myself, not from travelers, from my own life. The day my parents told me they were proud of me, the moment I realized I'd passed the bar exam, the feeling of my ex-wife's hand in mine before everything went wrong. I gave them to the jars, willingly, because here, they'll never fade, never distort, never become something less than they were. And in exchange, the accumulator let me borrow joy, pure, undiluted joy, from a jar dated 1943, from someone who experienced it at the end of a terrible war when they learned their child had survived. I held that joy for almost an hour. It was the best hour of my life. So yes, I'm looking for a replacement. But not because I want to escape. Not really. Because the accumulator needs fresh perspective. New collectors bring new approaches, new types of moments, new ways of understanding what's worth preserving. Vernon collected for 60 years, and his preferences shaped the library. My preferences will shape it differently, and whoever comes after me will bring something new again. That's how the collection grows. That's how it stays alive. That's how it becomes something more than any single keeper could build alone. I wonder sometimes about the keepers who came before Vernon. There must have been dozens of them, stretching back centuries, maybe longer. What did they collect? What moments did they find precious? What emotions did they think worth preserving? Somewhere in the basement, there are jars that predate the English language, jars labeled in symbols I don't recognize, containing feelings I can't name. The accumulator has been doing this for a very, very long time, and it's gotten very, very good at finding people who will understand, people who will appreciate the work, people who will eventually stop trying to leave. If you do receive my letter, if you do drive out to West Texas, if you do walk into this house full of jars, don't be afraid. The collection isn't what you think it is. It's not a prison. It's a privilege. And once you understand that, once you see what's been preserved here, what's been protected, what's been kept safe from the forgetting that claims everything else, you won't want to leave either. I'll be waiting. I've already picked out a jar for your arrival. First moment of understanding, your name, date. The moment when you realize what you've inherited. The moment when you stop being afraid and start being grateful. The moment when you become a keeper. Just like me, just like Vernon, just like everyone who came before. Welcome to the collection. Welcome home. One last thing. If you decide not to come, if you burn my letter and forget this place exists, I won't blame you. Freedom is precious. I remember what it felt like. But know this, the moment you burn that letter, you'll feel something leave you. A tiny piece of yourself. A moment you won't even remember having. The accumulator has to be fed. And it's learned to take from people who refuse its invitation too. Not much, just a taste. Just enough to remind you that you could have had everything, and you chose nothing instead. Sleep well tonight, and try not to dream about jars.